Karen is here also live streaming for us, so we've got some people visiting remotely. Good morning and welcome to Decorah UU. We are a welcoming, lay-led spiritual community moving together in time in an open search for truth and meaning. We believe in people's inherent capacity to lead ethical lives of personal fulfillment, pursuing the good of humanity. My name is Beth Walbert, and my pronouns are she, her, and I will be the service leader today. And we don't have hymn books or anything. Today's service, does anyone have any announcements to make? Don't forget the in gathering in 2 weeks.
Could you repeat that for?
Yes. Our annual in gathering service will be September 12th at Twin Springs Park with Sue Adi leading us. And remember, if you have traveled or if you haven't traveled, bring some water to that service for our common bowl. And share a memory about your summer. Anyone else have announcements?
Somebody had bug spray.
I do. Oh, Jean has bug
That's
spray.
my announcement because I see she's getting swarmed.
Yes, we have.
Yeah.
So those of you online, we have a lot of wasps here.
You
this
should
month.
move your sugar cup because they love it.
Well, that's why I have it covered, but I need,
Smell it.
She needs the
Yeah.
caffeine.
I need it.
Are there any announcements from people online? Or is that?
I don't see anybody raising a virtual hand or unmuting, so I think we're good.
Thank you. So today's service relates to our 7th UU principle, respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. And we're happy to have today part of our local community web, Laura Fries, who's going to tell us a little bit about the project, which is our Share the Plate recipient for July and August. So Laura, you want to come up here?
Thanks so much for having me. So the first thing I'm going to do is I had a chance to chat with just a few people before I came up. It was nice to meet some new friends and see some old ones here today. I want to start by explaining something. Some people think that I retired. About 3 years ago, I left the Northeast Iowa RCND. I was the executive director there. I'd been there for about 20 years in different capacities and absolutely loved it. But I retired from there per se, but I want to be honest with all you folks today. About 46 years ago, I actually began working for God. And so about 46 years ago, I gave my life. I accepted Jesus Christ as my Savior, and I said, I want to work for you, Lord, and do what you want me to. And I'm going to go forward from here and be your servant. And every day I get up since that time, and I give my life again and accept Jesus again as my Savior and ask him to forgive all my sins each day, because I know every day I am sin, and every day I am really forgiven. So I don't feel like I ever retired, and I probably won't ever retire, because when I get up in the morning, I just go before God and say, what do you want me to do? One of the things he did over that time is he really helped me realize, and I think he probably has helped all of you realize, because as we get older, I think the more he does, what I am created for and what I am good at in his love and in his mercy. And so one of the things I am is a learner, and I think you guys probably are too, because you have people come and talk to you about me. So I love to learn about every part of our community. I love to talk to people, find out what they know, what they care about, and just try to understand where they're coming from and what piece of the community they are. Just like all of you, right? I think a lot of you are. I'm also a strategist. So I like to look at what is happening and analyze it. I'm very analytical. And so I like to see how the system is working or functioning well and what isn't working or functioning. So I'm very analytical. And so if someone brings up a problem to me, I like to hear about it and see that problem. But then I like to look at it from a different perspective. I'm kind of a lumper. And so I see how all things are connected. You guys are talking about that too. So the connectedness of systems. And so During my time at the RCND, those 20 years I worked at the RCND, I was a systems expert. So I would look at all the different pieces of the system and try to figure out how to make them function better together with the dreams and the hopes of all the different people that I talked to. The other thing I am is a visionary. So I can see how things could be, but not necessarily, I don't necessarily get caught up in all the struggles of how to get there. I just see how they could be, and I face each day doing what I can to get to that vision. And I like to bring people to a common vision. So about a year and a half ago, I was asked to help out with a project. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. It's a childcare project. And some of you have worked in the childcare field. It's fairly complicated. It's fairly diverse. So where do your children go during the day? Where do everybody's children go? It's a lot different today than it was 100 years ago. And so when I was asked to do this, I had to think about the different pieces of the system. So some kids go into an in-home childcare. Some children go to a center, right? Some people stay home. Some children are at home all day with a parent or grandparent. So I had to think about all those different pieces of the system. But what I was told is that right now the system is broken. And the way this came about is that Sunflower Childcare, and some of you guys know the founders, the original founders of Sunflower. It's one of 3 centers in Winneshiek County, and it's the only childcare center that is a standalone. So it doesn't have support from the school, like NICC has a center, and they have support from the school. So if that center loses money, then NICC can help them. There's also a childcare center in Austin that has support from a church. So if that center loses money, that church can help them. Sunflower was formed here. Georgie Cleaver and a bunch of other women, some of you guys know those founders, started it as a community nonprofit, a 501c3 that would take in children, in part so that their mothers could work. And at the time, if you listen to their story, they said, well, a lot of people thought that because they said, well, if we provide childcare for those women will go to the bar. Quite a statement, right, on society. That was a long time ago. Sunflower has grown 4 times since then. They now have about 120 children that come every day. And they are one of the few centers and childcares, larger childcares that takes infants. So it's really limited amount of childcares that you can go to that will take infants, and they are one of them. In fact, childcare is pretty demanding, and unfortunately, we need more of it. They have 140 people on their waiting list. If you talk to anybody that works there, they'll tell you they have about 10 to 12 parents calling each week, begging for childcare, and they don't even want to be on the waiting list. They need it today, they need it Monday, they need it 2 weeks from now. And that waiting list, that 140, you're going to wait for 3 years. 3 years. Now that's in Decorah, and we're doing pretty good because around us, the wait is 9 children for every 1 childcare slot. So it's even longer. There just is no childcare. We have childcare deserts all around us. That's what they're called, childcare deserts. So I'm thinking about this. I'm thinking about, okay, Sunflower needs a bit better facility. They have a lot of people on their waiting list. So they could potentially say, look, we need to just fix this facility up so we can keep serving those 120 people. If they don't fix it up, they're facing closure in probably 2 to 4 years. So the building they purchased was an old church. The roof is separating. They've had mold problems in the walls. The basement floods, and the fire marshals shut down their only play area. So a lot of things have happened, and I could go on about that, but just know if they don't get a new facility, they close. So not only the 140 kids don't even have any hope in 5 years, the 120 that are there have to find someplace else. So this is impacting a lot of things. Our workforce is struggling right now, and our population and our community. So our population numbers are diving in Decorah and in Winneshiek County. And so if you look at population, you'll see we're under, I was saying 7,700. So we used to be up in 8,000. Now we're down under 7,700. And then I just talked to the city and they said, oh no, we're way lower than that now, even within a couple of years. So our population's diving. It's great that we have a lot of retirees here. 21 point something percent of our population here in Decorah is over 65, which is wonderful. It's a great retirement community. But that means also that translates to our workforce. So what's happening is all the people that work at the factories, at Collins Engineering, at Deco, at Gemini, and at Luther, there's a lot of places people are retiring. And then what would we hope? That someone younger comes in and takes that position. But you know what? They're calling every week economic development and saying, I can't find any childcare. I was just offered a $120,000 job and I can't move to your community unless I'm willing to drive 45 minutes one way to drop my child off in the morning and back, and then at night go pick them up. Why don't you have any childcare? So they're calling all the in-homes and they can't even get an answer. They're calling the centers and saying, well, it's a 3-year waiting list. They're saying, I can't move to your community. So that's another piece of the system, right? So if Sunflower gets a new facility, which would be great, will it work? We can make it bigger. Would that work? I could raise money for that right now. That's kind of what I'm doing, but I want to tell you why this is different. Right now, Sunflower pays their employees, you're looking at $8 to $12 an hour, no benefits. So what do you think happens? All those kids are there. Those people are there working there because they're passionate about it. They love it, right? But then when they want to have a child, they can't stay there working at the childcare because they don't make enough money to pay it, or to have the child because they have no health insurance, or to pay the childcare because they don't make enough money. And that's true of a lot of people, right? So they just don't have the capacity to keep employees. So childcare in our region, not only is it bad, it's getting worse. So in the last couple of years, we lost 70 more slots. In-home childcares are closing because they either retired or said, enough is enough. I can't do this anymore. And so Sunflower continues to have high turnover, right? So they could just raise the rates. That's what some people say. This is a great business. High demand, right? There's the logical conclusion a lot of people have. Just raise your rates. Do you think that will work? My youngest daughter was paying $330 a week for childcare for one child. Here, it's not that high, right? We're at that 200 average, right? But yeah, so we could do that. We could raise rates. So how much would a person have to make to pay that much per month in childcare? Could they make their house payment? Could they buy food? Where can they work? Can we only have the wealthiest people? No, we need all the other workers, right? That's part of our community. So what we said is let's figure out a different business plan. Let's just scratch it. Let's look at the system and how can we make it work better? Let's diversify income. So we can. So what we decided is let's do something that the community wants and needs and pair it with the childcare so that it will work for everybody, right? So the thing that came up in some of the planning sessions, community sessions we had, is there's no indoor play area for kids. So think about now having small children, and really in the middle of winter, where do they go play? In the basement, right? If you work at the high school, you can take them in there. But most people don't really, in Decorah, in Michigan County, there's no rec center. And there's no indoor playground. It used to be years and years ago, you go to McDonald's, right? And they have play state, right? They have a play area. No, we don't even have that. So they said, why don't you develop a discovery center? And this is modeled on the Children's Museum. And so has anybody been to a Children's Museum? Really cool places. You can learn so much. Your kids have fun. They're running around. But there's also science, technology, engineering, math, art, right? All different kinds of things they're learning while they're playing and active. And so we said, here's 2 things we can do. We can have the childcare, not just to replace what we have, but to grow. And adjacent to it, in another wing, we'll have this Children's Museum or Discovery Center. And we will charge the public to come in there. We want to do that in evenings and on weekends. Anybody can come, right? We have a huge tourism population that flows into our community. Let them come and pay for our childcare, right? During the day, we have a lot of childcares that would love to come to a children's museum or discovery center. School age kids, homeschoolers, other childcare, preschools, they can all come there. We'll just schedule them in. So they have to schedule to use the space. The same as Sunflower childcare students, right? So everybody schedules in at different times during the day, and then the evening and weekends, we're open to the public. So we modeled this. We used some really complicated GIS modeling. It's called rough gravity model to make sure that the business model works, and it does. And where we're at today is we have a $8 million project at least. If we expand it some, it'll go up to 12, but right now we're going with the 8 so that we can have, instead of 120, we'll have 215 children at the childcare. And then the Discovery Center will help pay the employees a more livable wage. So we're looking at hopefully $15 an hour in benefits for those children. So that's what I'm doing. So that's what I do is I go talk to people about that. I write grants for that. I'm helping them with that project. And I have 3 of these today is all. We printed hundreds of them. And I dropped by to pick them up today and they're gone. There's 3 left. So I know we have more coming next week, and you can certainly go to decorahdiscovery.com to find out more about it.
.org or .com?
.org, excuse me. And the project has seen great success so far. So we've already raised, and I don't think it's updated yet on the website, but we're already over $4.5 million raised for this project. We just submitted another large grant on Friday. And we've met with the governor and the head of the Iowa Economic Development and Finance Authority. And they were both very supportive of the project. So they are looking for funding for it. The other aspect of it is we want this something that's to be sustainable, that reflects Decorah. And so not only will it have 100 kilowatt solar panels, it'll also have geothermal system. We'll have recycling of food and compost. And we'll have innovative stormwater runoff practices. We'll have everything that we can to show people who we are. And then we'll use all those things to teach children. We estimate between 8,000 and 12,000 children a year will go through that Discovery Center to teach them about all those things we care about. Sustainability, all those things. And so that will all be incorporated into the learning. We'll use that area as something that shows who we are. So that's the project. And I hope you go and find out more at Decorah Discovery. I have 3 of these and I'll leave them for you. And it's really nice to talk to you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Wow, yeah, that's awesome to hear all the background on that project. So. And that's our Share the Plate for July and August. But I think as a board, maybe we'll talk about, can we give a larger gift than we've already again, or do it again? Yeah. So, okay, let's do the cello sliding.
So just to clarify, this is the last Sunday to give this time
Right.
for Share the Plate.
Right. But you can send it, you could still send it in September and put the Decorah Discovery Center on your check, and then I'll make sure it goes to that project. I don't know if we're gonna be able to. Okay, let's read together the cello sliding. These
Roses under my window make no reference to former roses or to better ones. They are for what they are. They exist with God today. There is no time to them. There is simply the rose. It is perfect in every moment of its existence.
Now for our opening song, please rise in body and or spirit, and we'll be singing to begin to be simple as into the new bowl.
'Tis a gift to be simple, 'tis a gift to be free, 'tis a gift to come down where we ought to be. And when we find ourselves in the place just right, 'twill be in the valley of love and delight. When true simplicity To turn, turn will be our delight, till by turning, turning we come round right.
Now's the time for our land acknowledgement. With this land acknowledgement, our congregation is engaging in the practice of truth-telling and reconciliation. Northeast Iowa was first home to the Iowa or Baksoche, the Sac and Fox or Meskwaki, the Decorah, and the Ho-Chunk. We recognize the ongoing relationship of Indigenous people to this land and follow their lead as we endeavor to be stewards as we go forward. Please pause with me for a moment as we commit our hearts to uplifting, standing with, listening to, and following the lead of Black, Indigenous, and people of color as we endeavor to create the world in which we want to live. This is the time in our service when we invite anyone who wishes to come to do so to step forward. We're just going to do virtual candles because of the wind. And those of you online, if you would raise a virtual hand, Karen will make sure that you get a chance. And share a personal joy, concern, or milestone in your life. Please use the mic. Jean?
Okay, Greg and I wanted to share the joy of the fact that we found, as a city, we found Brandon safe on Monday.
Yeah.
I was scared to death, so that's a joy. And I also wanted to make an announcement. I have now joined the elite club of fallen UU members.
Oh no.
And even better,
Oh. Beth, you can relate.
at least it was my big buck tooth, so now I'll get a decent tooth.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'll give you a hug later.
For
Ellen? Oh, sorry.
For those who are joined by phone only, just wanted to note that Jean displayed that she had a rather substantial injury above her upper lip and a missing tooth.
And they didn't even check the big lump on my head. I don't remember anything, but Greg said they didn't.
You were not.
I'm lighting a candle for my friend and fellow recorder player and my flute teacher, Suzanne Ernst. She's been in a strange position for the last week and a half of having both of her parents in hospice care. And her dad died on Tuesday evening, and mom is, I think, they're holding on. So this has been well, it's actually been a lot of years for Suzanne that she's been caring for her parents very intensely. And it's really hard, even though they're 98 years old.
Anyone else?
Every now and then, the contemporary world gives us a version of,
Sorry.
gives us a version of a circle of hell. And that is what is going on in Afghanistan right now. And it is so overwhelming, and the needs are so great, and the resources so crazily scarce that it's hard to know what to do. So I just lift up our collective souls to give hope to the hopeless in that situation. Thank you.
Is there anyone online, Karen? So in preparation for a moment of silent meditation, I'll light one virtual candle for joys and concerns that are unspoken but remain in our hearts and minds. Let's sing together the response.
Your joy is my joy, your sorrow my sorrow. Together we live our days, together we love this place in beloved community. We are not alone.
So now it's time for the offering, and part of our fellowship's commitment and outreach. So again, this is for worthy organizations. So again, this month and last is for the Discovery Center for our Share the Plate. And there are multiple ways to give, so you can check decorahuu.org for more information. We deeply appreciate the gracious gifts of our members and friends, whether given on a weekly, monthly, or annual basis. Please join me in singing the offertory.
For all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift that we are called to use to build the common good and make our own days glad.
Nancy's going to read our reading first.
So I intended this reading to be a kind of seamless introduction into my talk. It's from an essay by Ann Patchett entitled How to Practice. And she is involved in the process of clearing out her house. Carl, that's her husband. Carl had been living in our house for 25 years. I'd been there for 16, the longest I'd ever lived anywhere by more than a decade. Ours was a marriage of like-minded neatness. Carl's suit jacket went directly onto our hanger. I wiped down the kitchen counters before going to bed. Our never-ending stream of house guests frequently commented on the tranquility of our surroundings, and I told them that the secret was not having much stuff. But we had plenty of stuff. It's a big house. And over time, the closets and drawers had filled with things we never imagined, and in many places had completely forgotten we owned. Carl said that he was game for a deep excavation. He was working from home. I had stopped traveling. If we were ever going to do this, now was the time. I started in the kitchen, a room that's friendly and overly familiar, sitting on the floor in order to address the lower cabinets first. The plastic soup containers were easy. I held on to too many of those. At some point, I bought new bread pans without letting the old ones go. I had 4 colanders. Cabinet by cabinet, I pulled out the contents, assessed, divided, weighed down, replaced. I filled the laundry basket with the things I didn't want or need and carried those discards to the basement. I had made the decision to wait until we'd finished with the entire house before trying to find a place for the things we were getting rid of. This was a lesson I picked up from my work as a writer. Writing must be separate from editing. And if you try to do both at the same time, nothing will get done. I would not stop the work at hand in order to imagine who might want the square green serving dish I bought 15 years before and never put on the table. Okay, so that's an introduction to my talk today called Having It Being Had. Let me find my spot here. I'll try to kind of do the book and do the microphone at the same time. Check my time here. Okay. There's a famous scene from the old television show, I Love Lucy, that I want to begin with. In my mind, I always call it Lucy at the Chocolate Factory. And it's the episode where Lucy and Ethel decide they need to make some money, so they get a job at the candy factory. It's an iconic scene for Lucille Ball's comedic genius, because what starts out as a reasonable task of Lucy and Ethel wrapping each candy as it comes in over the conveyor belt becomes a comic nightmare as the belt with the candies begins to accelerate. And Lucy, desperate to keep up, picks up the candy and stuffs each piece wherever she can. Her pockets, her mouth, probably even her ear. It's a scene about, yet again, Lucy gets more than she bargained for, and isn't she foolish and funny? But I want us to think about that. Sorry, I want us to think about that image with a different lens this morning. In a way, I see the mechanical, ever-quickening assembly line as a metaphor for our capitalist economy. And Lucy, simply the witness laborer who thinks she has a role to play by keeping up with whatever speed the machine is set for. The goals, in this case, the candy, keep coming at us. The goods, not the goals, the goods. The goods keep coming at us nonstop. And the machine doesn't care because it's a machine. Whether it's going too fast or we can't keep up, it may be comic when it's on I Love Lucy, because after all, it's just candy, and what's the harm? But if we play out the analogy I'm making, and the candy becomes a relentless stream of stuff of all sizes and proportions, then the joke becomes tragic, and we are fools for not walking away from the machine with its ever maddening pace. Now, I was inspired to write about this, to talk about this, by two things I read this spring. One was the essay I just read you a bit from by Ann Patchett. That's in the New Yorker with the date there. How to Practice is the title of the essay. Basically, the essay reveals Patchett's process as she tries to clean out her house of belongings she has no more need for. It was inspired by the death of the father of one of her childhood friends, who never let go of anything. So as Patchett describes her psychological calisthenics to get her own belongings into some kind of manageable order, she ruminates on the way our belongings create an archive of the selves we have grown into and grown out of. Things we never needed, but thought we did. Things whoever we are now don't need anymore. Now, this essay hit me quite close to the bone, and it was followed by my encounter with a book by one of my favorite nonfiction authors. Her name is Eula Biss, B-I-S-S, and I was intrigued by the title of her recent book, Having and Being Had, because it captured a corollary of Ann Patchett's essay, that what we think is an active process of possession and acquisition, having, can easily, without our knowing it, become passively destructive, being had. So Biss's book is a series of meditations that were inspired by journal entries she kept after buying her house in Chicago. Now, she teaches at Northwestern University, and she does reveal her salary to be what all of us would consider to be a very generous one at $73,000 a year as an artist in residence. Now, if she were like me when she bought her house, it was the occasion for writing the largest check of her entire life for the down payment. And it inspired her to think deeply about the exchange in our market economy between labor and acquisitions. It's as if owning a home for her solidified Biss's now established credentials in the game of acquisition and capitalism. And her meditations on the cost, literal, emotional, spiritual, are now put in great relief. According to one reviewer, this quote grapples with what constitutes labor and art and what she wants from and for each of them, end quote. Now, in one purely absurd example, she describes how an advertising agency was interested in paying her $8,000 to take over her house because its architecture and design matched so perfectly what the Walmart Corporation wanted for its look of ads, specifically targeted to African American citizens. The irony is not lost on this, that in fact, her African American neighbor's house might have been more realistic. But the economic assembly line has to keep churning. What is white privilege if not being paid to vacate your upper middle class home for 2 days so it can be fictionally cast as the living space of African Americans when there are in fact African Americans living in an actual house down the street? So this is the kind of back and forth that she struggles with and talks about and writes about. Throughout the book, she quarrels with the assumptions that we must always want more, need more, pay for more. And yet she interrogates her own assumption about how much, this is particularly relevant given the talk we just had, she interrogates her own assumption about how much, well actually how little, she can afford to pay her daycare provider. So that was, well, you know, could have asked for a better introduction than what we had this morning. This brings up these quandaries in a very essayistic tone. You will not find a solution in this book. She never poses as someone who has an answer to these conundrums of economics. And as I was writing to this talk, though, I came upon something else. I listened to another writer on Fresh Air this week, Anna Lemke, who talked about her recent book, Dopamine Nation. Dopamine Nation. Or dopamine, whatever you say. Lemke is a neurologist who studies addictive behaviors and brain chemistry. And she is positing that a person's addiction to anything, gambling, alcohol, shopping, to buying things, may be another version of the way in which our brain seeks out to release its dopamine fix. Now, this gave me an entirely different spin on the image of being had, a sense that it is the job of corporate executives, ad agencies, sellers of goods to convince people that if we have this thing, ourselves, which may actually be this dopamine enhanced part of our cerebral cortex, will feel more alive, more authentic, more in possession of ourselves, even though it's our very selves that are being had. I've been feeling this onslaught of goods, particularly on Facebook. I don't know whether any of you check your Facebook feed, but Facebook is the assembly line of information in the exchange of goods in our capitalist lives. It's on full throttle. And not even Lucille Ball could keep up with it. What is it about the slick pictures of clothes or tools or car accessories or food that keeps the Facebook wheel churning on and on and on? Whatever we click on, Facebook has turned on an advertising machine that prompts us to click and pay and pay and click and wait for the package to arrive just for us. Now, I was rescued from my meditation on all this by none other than our own Harvey Benson. I wish Harvey were here today. He wrote in the recent religion column on simplicity. And Harvey exhorted all of us to live more simply so that others may simply live. We stop the assembly line by operating in a radical economy of gift giving. Gift giving. Of paring down what we think we need. Of going through our stuff and giving it away. There's a person, I don't remember who, was famous on Facebook or in the news about this thing of sort of radical decluttering. And we had to ask of every object in our house, do I use this? Do I need this? Does it bring me joy?
Marie Kendall or something like
Yeah. I have to tell you, when I was composing these remarks, I actually wrote the word job instead of the word joy when I first drafted this. And isn't that what the great capitalistic machine has convinced us? That we need a job to earn money that will bring us joy. And it does somehow work that way, thankfully so. We exchange our hard-earned energy and effort for the secondary reinforcer of money. And money enables us to buy those goods we need, food and shelter. And with whatever is left over, we can choose. We are not had by the capitalist machine. We can choose to save it, to buy the things that we genuinely need, or to give it away. So I don't put these questions to us to put us into a guilt mode. Let's be honest, many of us here, I mean, honestly, things we purchase or are given are not just for accumulating material goods, but because of the emotional connection we have as we acquire them. I mean, I have several beautiful things in my recently remodeled house that I got from my father. And I'm not going to give them away, except to someone else in my family when I die. So these inheritances from people that we love and genuine rarities and texture and charm that we feel do bring us joy. I'm not advocating that we take a hatchet and slash through belongings. And believe me, when I tell you the person this talk is aimed at more than anyone, it's myself. I have and continue to spend a lot of money on stacks of things I love to buy. Books, for one, as you can probably tell. And then all measure of pens and paper. Show me a special leather-bound notebook and my dopamine center starts to get very excited. And before I know it, I am buying a new notebook I don't need. Which is to say, I am being had by the manufacturers of notebooks who, if they could, would enroll me in a weekly or monthly subscription plan and send me a new notebook once a month, whether I needed it or not. Oh, what can free us from such madness? Once I thought that I operated in a total cash economy. I decided that plastic was the problem. And so I just resolved I would just pay cash for anything I bought because I thought the physical reality of seeing the money in its bills and coins would help me really figure out, do I need this? Do I really need this? But then I gave up that practice when I realized, of course, I could use my debit card for just about every purchase, and it was handier than having. That's why the cash economy kept me from buying things, because I often just didn't have it. The other trick I tried was the steady state theory. One belonging into the house, one belonging just like it out had to go. New shoes or boots needed, one pair had to go to the depot. And that's a good model. If I really lived by it. I lived in a much less cluttered bedroom, especially when it comes to socks. There's something about socks that makes me feel rich when I have a whole drawer full of them. Way more than I can wear in a week. So as I said, it's easy when we talk about the stuff in our lives to feel as if we're on a journey towards guilt. And guilt is its own kind of dopamine, I think. Really, as we move our lives indoors this fall, I want to remind myself of how to stop the assembly line, of limiting how much I think I need, of asking the question, am I having this purchase or am I being had by someone else's decision about what I need or want? Thank you.
Thank you.
I was hoping we had time for discussion. We have
10:48.
just a little bit of time. Yeah. Jean.
Just have one comment. I lost this tooth because I tripped over something. We have so much stuff.
Could you repeat that for the folks? on Zoom?
Yeah, Jean's comment was she lost a tooth because she tripped over something because her house has so much stuff in it that it's hard to maneuver when you're trying to take care of things. So I know we all share that for sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I wonder if there's oh, yeah.
I just wonder, thinking about hoarders we have in our family, just, if that's part of the dopamine thing. So I'm gonna have to do some research. I never thought about it that way.
That book is called Dopamine Nation. And it's Lemke, Anna Lemke. And she was on Fresh Air this week. If you go to the Fresh Air link, you can listen to her. It's a great interview with Terry Gross. And it really, she's asking especially about the electronic culture. She's just saying this thing that we're feeding ourselves with these clicks and these videos and our incessant kind of compulsion to check what's online. But she's very good, very smart. So it kind of worked in with my thing. Anybody else?
Just so you know, Deb Lathrop said awesome talk.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Deb. I appreciate that. Just the things I'm thinking about that I have to work on. And in part, it was inspired because I did this addition to kind of make maneuvering in my house on one floor more accessible as I age. But it was more space. And it's caused me to do a deep, deep reflection on really, Nancy, what do you need and what do you not need? So really this talk was aimed at me and my hard head, not to you.
It's an inherited trait.
Jean is asking, is this an inherited trait? Yeah.
Grow up with it. Yeah.
I think it's a practice. We all learn from what we have been taught and shown and practiced in the houses and the culture that we grew up in. And that's why I fear so much in our consumer economy that children growing up just assume you have a special day, you have to buy something. The shop is always outside the museum. When you go through the museum, then you have to buy something. The way in which we cultivate this practice of acquiring goods as always part of the experience. If you don't have the T-shirt, you didn't run the race. Where does that whole thing come from in our culture?
I was thinking of that this week when I saw someplace, I can't remember if it was Iceland or Denmark, where they were getting down to the 4-day work week. And they said, this is a model that other countries are looking at now, the 4-day work week. And I thought, then what do people do for those other 3 days if they're not working? Are they out shopping? I started to think, what will we do? And how do we change the shopping to let's go canoeing, let's go walking, let's go hiking, let's go visit the grandkids. So I think whenever we free up more time for ourselves, we have to figure out how will we spend that? What activities will fill our lives then?
I also think the disposable clothing industry, all the cheap clothes. So people say, oh, it only costs me $5 or $10. So I can get rid of it and buy some more. And that a those clothes end up being sent to foreign countries where we're, yeah, and so it's really bad.
Thank you so much, Nancy. My head is just kind of spinning with that, with things like when you walk into Fairway and it's September and they've got the Halloween candy out that you need to buy, but it's, or the Christmas, they just, yeah. And then I think it relates to why people are having trouble hiring workers, because people are reevaluating what is my time worth and what does my job require. There's just so many connections. Thank you so much. Awesome. Okay. Now we're going to have our closing song, and please rise in body or spirit and sing Amazing Grace.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found, was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear, the hour I first believed. Through many dangers, toils, and snares, I have already found 'tis grace that brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home. When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we've known life's days to sing God's praise than when we'd first begun.
Let's read together the words while we extinguish the chalice. We
Clasp the hands of those that go before us and the hands of those who come after us. We enter the little circle of each other's arms and the larger circle of lovers whose hands are joined in a dance, and the larger circle of all poets passing in and out of life who move also in a dance to a music so subtle and vast that no ear hears it except in fragments. And I've got a comment from our chat here. I just wanted to share that Craig Mosier is online and had said one change strategy is to simply turn and, quote, walk away from the king, unquote. We can just not cooperate.
So please help yourself to a cup of coffee this morning.
Thank you for joining us, and goodbye to our online participants. Have a good
Bye,
week, everyone.
y'all.
Bye-bye.
Watch out.